interrupted one of my
My phone's literally over there on the table.
one of my guests.
It's on silent, but let me just put it on to do not disturb because I don't trust how.
Yeah, I had a guest, their phone went off and it got distracted them completely.
No, not having that. I'm not doing with that one. Just put it on coaching and then no one can contact me.
Yeah, I put it on airplane, like on the airplane, so no one can call me.
Because I don't have any notifications. And I'll put it here. It's out of the way.
All right. We are literally good to go.
Okay.
Everything is in order. I think I may just stay here with you guys.
Cool.
So, ATEM recording, Roadcaster recording.
Perfect. Hey Danielle, thank you for coming on to Divine Enigma today. Thank you so much for being here. I love the fact you've come onto this podcast. Do you mind introducing yourself to our audience members who are watching or listening to the podcast?
And thank you so much for inviting me. So my name is Danielle Kajo-Mikowski. I am a neurodiverse coach, speaker and consultant. I just left a big career of 20 years in pharma as a biochemist, as a microbiologist and a project manager, and was setting up within that organisation the Neurodiverse Network, and decided that I wanted to do more for neurodiverse community. So I decided to leave and set up my own business.
So how's that, the business world now?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a transition. I was brought up in the corporate pharma world, from a bench scientist of about 11 years, and being neurodiverse myself, really kind of not even paying any attention to any of that. And then I was given support by a senior person of my lab, to look at my strengths and to start looking at things I could do. And at that point, I pivoted into project management, which I loved and I really enjoyed. I was definitely a people's project manager more than a technical one. And I think the people's aspect really helped me understand the strengths I had and the empathy and reading people and all the things. I was very techie and logical, but the people side really came through in that role. And then I decided that this is where I wanted to be. Also, if you work in pharma, it takes so long for it to go from molecule to product. I was getting impatient. I was like, I need to see the roots of my labour, and working in coaching and supporting others, you get to see people thrive. Maybe over a period of time, but a lot shorter than in pharma. So then, yeah, I I was in that for about 20 years, and then decided to take the lunge and move into the business world, which was beautiful, crazy, lovely, surprising, all the amazing, wonderful things it could be. And I'm really, really enjoying finding my way, starting off and looking at new challenges as a business person. So yeah.
So as a business person and a neurodivergent coach, how's that kind of informed your experiences in terms of now specifically going into neurodiversity coaching? Because sometimes this is a neurodiversity podcast. Sometimes with neurodiversity, people think, oh, neurodiversity, but there's so many different types of neurodiverse conditions. So you have someone who will be like an ADHD coach or dyslexia coach or a dyspraxia coach, for example. But why neurodiversity and covering all the different neurodiversity? Because some people who have autism, for example, may have different needs from someone who has ADHD. And again, with neurodiversity, it's a mixed bag sometimes. You get a bit of both. So in my case, I have ADHD and dyslexia. So it's a mixed bag for me. So my dyslexic brain stops me in my process of thinking things. My ADHD mind gets me in hyper focus, and I'm just like, my brain can't stop thinking, or I've got so many things going on in my mind, and I can do I'm good at doing a lot of different things. Like, that's just how my brain is. And people don't understand it. You seem scattered, but like, I can do so many different things because of my ADHD. So yeah, what kind of informed you on to doing neurodiversity coaching rather than maybe specifically looking at one particular area of neurodiversity?
Yeah, that's a great question. And to be honest, when I actually went into my coaching qualification, I didn't want a niche. I kept on saying to people, I don't want a niche. And before I was supporting some neurodiverse individuals, individuals who had ADHD, dyslexia, but really focus on career progression because that was my knowledge of being stuck and then propelling my career. And I focused more on that. And I kept on saying, I don't want a niche. And then I started talking as a part of my organisation I worked with. I started connecting with the community, like individuals like yourself. And I started getting pulled into conversations. And that's when I was like, oh, there's a need here. And because I was getting certified as well, I was like, there wasn't, not all neurodiverse coaches or ADHD coaches or dyslexic coaches were certified. And I was like, well, why can't they have the same level of coaching as a CEO or executive coaching? And I wanted to level up. And then on that, when I started entering the world of business, the question came up is you niche further, right? You go into ADHD coach and you go into dyslexic coach. And the people that were coming to me for support were holistically as individuals made up of so many different things. They weren't just ADHD or just autistic or just dyslexic. They had so many things that showed up for them. And I'm very much an advocate of intersectionality as well. That has a massive impact on someone's experience. As someone who has hidden intersectionalities as well, I find it's really important, and it does play, as a coach, it does play a part of how you support someone on that journey. So I decided very intentionally, which is benefiting me now, very intentionally not to niche, because I was getting individuals coming up. And if I said I was just an ADHD coach, I know if it was for me who believes they has ADHD traits, hasn't been formally diagnosed, but as having ADHD, but diagnosed as having dyslexia, I might be, well, that coach is not really for me. I'm not quite sure. And the approach as a coach really is, and this is what all coaching is. I know there are different avenues that people kind of bring. And it is very blended and slightly different for neurodiverse individuals, but it is really making sure that the person who's getting coached really understands it's a safe space for them and it's guided by them. So it's not guided by me. So really and truthfully, their experience helps guide them. And I'm on the way to try and probe a little deeper. Maybe we look at strategies, look at ways of approaching. And that means that every aspect of them shows up in a session. And I wanted to kind of minimize that down to a neurodiverse community because I felt that they needed the support to hold space, because there are not much places where they can hold space for themselves to think. But I didn't want to go niche any further than that. I was very intentional.
It's interesting you talked about intersectionality. How have you kind of like brought those kind of elements of being neurodiverse with another sort of, I guess, diverse group? So for example, being black and neurodiverse, or having like a hidden disability, which I guess neurodiversity falls into hidden disability, but you might have motor neurone disease or some kind of disability or hidden trait that comes with your neurodiversity, and then being a woman with a neurodiverse condition, those intersections, how do you kind of play into those things that a lot of people don't tend to look into? They just see, oh, you're neurodiverse and this is a picture of what neurodiversity looks like, whereas neurodiversity can look different to different people. Yeah,
exactly. It's a spectrum, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing we need to consider. And the reason why I decided to kind of leverage some of that is because I myself have health conditions. And you can say, okay, you've got health conditions, everybody's got something, but actually those health conditions do impact how my neurodivergent traits show up for me. So if I'm in physical fatigue because I'm having a flare-up and I'm very open about the things that are involved in me in terms of my health, then that impacts my mental fatigue. There are times when I'm on fire with my ADHD traits and I'm like, yeah, I want to get this done. And my body just says no. And there's other times where my body's like, right, you can do this, you're active. And my brain's like in procrastination. And so they do play a part and they work together. And I think I like having a nice solid word, intersectionality, for people who maybe want to understand the term. But I really think we need to start breaking down and showing people what that means. Like, What does it mean to have a hidden physical disability or hidden condition or maybe a visible disability, being black, being from the LGBT plus community,
Yeah.
and be, we need to show those things. And then, because people then feel like I'm not alone. It's another bit of, I know when I was going through a point where I was going through my fertility journey, which I'm quite vocal about, and going through my health conditions, even if I put my neurodiverse side. And one of the things when I was looking at support groups was, but I've got this extra thing, so I can't go to that group. And I've got this other thing, so I can't go to the other group. And it's that feeling of not belonging because you've got so many multiple things that are going on with you.
Yeah.
And I think if you can open up those communities to say, look, we know there's other things showing up for you and we're still providing you that safe space, that means that you can find a safe space where you can talk about some other things that may impact your neurodiverse traits, but not directly be the typical kind of challenge that other people have. I think it's important for us to have those conversations.
I think it is, definitely, because sometimes we don't always see the impact of that intersection that affects your neurodiverse condition, and how you turn up for yourself. Like, me being a black woman, for a long time I've had to mask the fact that I have neurodiverse conditions because I feel like it's another barrier that I have to face. I've kind of overcome that now, but very, very early on in my career, I had to be like, okay, right. When I found out I had a neurodiverse condition, I was ADHD and dyslexic, I was like, okay, so I'm a black woman with neurodiverse conditions. How am I going to navigate this corporate space and tell people about this? Are they going to judge me? Are they going to think less of me? They already probably look at me physically and just think, oh gosh, why? Like, we have to make a room for this person. And I'm having to code switch, and it's even harder code switching when you have a neurodiverse condition.
Definitely.
And trying to fit into that corporate space. So I totally understand that the intersection is so important, because what black people deal with is one aspect, but then when you're dealing on with the layers of that, and also within our own communities, I find that there's a lot of stigma around being neurodiverse. Like, I come from an African home. If you're not a doctor, lawyer, accountant or whatever, and you can't pass your exams and stuff, and being a black person, that's another aspect you're dealing with as well, and it can be quite a challenge. But yeah, definitely intersection is something certainly that we should continue to talk about, and I will continue to talk about it, as I'm sure you will. I know maybe not that recent, but you did a TED Talk some time back.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about that? Because I love the fact you're a TEDx speaker, and you can say that I'm a TEDx speaker. I'll get there one day. But yeah,
No,
but yeah.
It was such a surprise. And you know what? Funny enough, this is where you think, whatever you believe in, whether you're religious or cultural or spiritual, whatever it is, right manifestation really happens. So about a year ago, I'd written in my phone, I want to do a TEDx talk. And I think someone else who did a TEDx talk, I can't remember who it was. And I remember thinking, I want to do a TEDx talk on this. And I left it on my phone. I didn't think anything more of it. I wasn't striving to do a TEDx. My business was just, I wanted to go out there and talk about the message, build up my coaching skills and build up my business foundations. And then through a friend of a friend who had done some speaking around, they invited me to come down. And they were like, and it's so funny. This is when your neurodiverse brain kicks in. So they contacted me and said, we would like you to do a TEDx talk. We're inviting you. And I thought that was me applying. So I kept on saying to them, right, so I've done this, this, and this. I need to bring this together. I'm going to give you a proposal of what I'm going to say and send my qualifications in. Just thinking, there's a list of people, surely. And the lady turned to me and goes, no, we've done our research already. We're inviting you now to come.
Do you think that was imposter syndrome, probably?
I think it was imposter syndrome, but I think it was also, again, being in the corporate environment, we're not used to, and this is where we go back a little bit to intersectionality, being a black woman particularly as well, is that we're not used to given those opportunities. We always feel like we have to apply and strive for them. So the thought of someone actually coming and saying, no, we've done our research on you. What do you mean you've researched me already? and I've ticked boxes. Like, what? And I haven't had to pitch anything. That was really weird for me initially. And then I think, and then it was like, yeah, we want you to come and talk, and that was great. And doing it in Romania was even brilliant. I'm glad I didn't do it in the UK. In some respect, I wanted to go and talk about it in a country that was different to mine culturally. There were some amazing questions that didn't get caught on the actual TEDx that came out from the audience around culture, around communication, and being neurodiverse versus, you know, being in a Eastern European culture where they're quite direct, like we are in our Black culture, and how's that show up? It was so many different questions that were amazing. But I was able to go there and meet some amazing TEDx speakers and just enjoy that experience and share around, you know, my journey, but also, you know, questioning with curiosity and kindness, my lovely foundation of coaching, where we can start from the real pure beginning. We don't have to have all this technical bells and whistles to support someone who's neurodiverse. I think sometimes them just being seen, heard, and someone trying to understand in the basics is really what they want, and then we can build on those to find out what they need. And people underestimate communication and making space for people was an important part. So yeah, it was exciting. I think one of the things that was very interesting was I had to write a script, and I'm dyslexic. My coach was absolutely fantastic and very, very, very patient. And I had to try and read a script, which I'm going to say right now, to be completely transparent. This is a premiere for you guys. Is that I didn't read it exactly because I just can't do scripts. And I said to him, I can't do scripts. But I was able to keep on point and keep on gist and be able to keep the flow going as much as I could. But yeah, it was a very interesting way of doing it that wasn't very neuro-inclusive. So I was like, that doesn't really, I'm going to have to work in a neurotypical format because that's how they kind of shoot it and how it needs to be, which obviously I challenged. But yeah, it worked out in the end. Yeah.
I think you're the third person on my podcast as a TEDx talker. So that maybe I'm going to get more TEDx.
There we go. Definitely need more. Definitely need more.
But no, it's brilliant to know that. And it's brilliant to have someone like, actually you're the second neurodiverse person that's been on the podcast that is a TEDx speaker. So yeah, I'm glad you're on here, and this gives encouragement to other people who are neurodiverse that you can do these things. If you're ever feeling like you can't or you feel it's impossible, there's space, there's room for you to do these things, but sometimes we're not always included in the table or the conversation of having the opportunities that we want. I wanted to shed some light on neuro-inclusive workplaces. Based on your experience as a consultant, if you're an employer, how can an employer make their workplace more neuro-inclusive? Because I think employers are doing it, but a lot of employers don't know how to do that and what is the best way to make it more neuro-inclusive. Because again, although neurodiversity is being spoken about more and more, people don't quite understand it, and they don't quite understand how to make the workplace more neuro-inclusive for employees. What kind of tips or ideas you would put into an environment, maybe a much more or bigger organization or even a small one, because sometimes smaller ones are not always equipped to always help neurodiverse staff. So yeah,
I think it's an interesting one, and it does depend on the size of the organization. And for me, coming from a global organization with not just the global sites, but also very specific country sites, that has been a challenge. And in a smaller organization, some organizations can actually implement a lot quicker because they've only got like maybe a couple of hundred staff, and it's easier for them. The CEO knows them all. They've started in maybe a startup that's gradually gone. So it does depend on the size of the organization. I think having people come in and being aware of neurodiversity is great, but like you said, it's the action behind it. How do you create it? And that's where a lot of organizations get stuck. And sometimes I say it's not necessarily just about doing stuff, it's about creating that culture. Because you can go and invest in all the technology, everything under the sun, and say that's all available. But if someone who's neurodiverse in your community or your organization doesn't feel like it's a safe space, they're not going to ask for anything. And so it's really important to be able to create that environment and safe space where they can actually put their hands up and say, they don't even have to disclose they're neurodiverse. I have a challenge and I need support. I mean, ideally, we want in our community, in the neurodiversity community and movement, more people to disclose and get diagnosis, because it gives us more data to be able to innovate and create more things that can help support our community. However, I think sometimes companies get overwhelmed by all of that stuff. If I throw money at it, maybe that will sort itself out. That isn't the case. We need to look at things like, how are we supporting managers supporting their teams? How are we supporting teams around how they can support each other? How are leaderships being advocates and showing up and putting resources to help those who are really striving to push this topic in their organization? You know, bringing speakers in, bringing coaches and mentors in, you know, bringing programs in together that they can learn from, making sure leaders are held accountable and are, you know, pledge that they're going to do something about it, not just talk about it and tick a box on their resume.
Yeah.
And I think for managers and line managers, they're the ones that get stuck in the middle because they're expecting to do something about it without much guidance. And I think the most purest that you can do as someone who's been with different types of leaders across the organization I worked with is don't underestimate your leadership and coaching and mentoring skills at day one. Holding a space and being very open about that individual, saying, you've disclosed to me that is confidential. How can I best support you? Am I the right best person to support you going forward? And if I am, okay, what do you need? If you don't know what you need, because some of us just don't know what we need and what's available, let's take that journey together. That might look like me having more regular one-to-ones with you. It might be having coaching sessions. It might be you seeing someone external. It might be us having a talk with someone in our organization around adjustment and support. These are things, but the manager being by the side of that person, or a manager or someone of that kind of level, being with that person to say, number one, it's okay, it's valid, I'm here to help you and we're going to figure this out together. I mean, if you had that, that's better than having all the technology, because you know that if your job changes or you go for different projects and things adapt in the workplace, if you have to change your equipment, you know that person or that culture of an organisation is always going to be there to support you. And that will help you across your whole career journey, not just in that one job or one role. So I think people underestimate that.
I think the issue I find with large corporations, maybe small businesses, and it depends on the kind of company you work with, is that maybe they will say, okay, we want to help neurodiverse people from a sort of corporate perspective. But then if someone's not being taught as a manager how to manage a neurodiverse staff member, then it becomes a bit of an issue.
Yeah.
And then they'll say, well, I've tried with that staff member, but they're not learning. Well, as have you tried to understand how they learn things?
But that's the thing. I think they need to understand it's not about telling somebody what they need to do. It's about asking. And this is why, really and truthfully, if you look at any management books or leadership books, they always talk about pure coaching questions, because it's not about you, it's about the other person. If you're leading and managing a team, it's not about you being a manager. It's about your team. And therefore, you have to question and understand your team, whether it's different dynamics, whether neurodiverse or neurotypical, whether they've got other intersectionalities. Understanding your team is important. What's showing up for you? So the question is, what do you need to do to be amazing at what you do? And then how can I help you as your manager to provide that? And if you don't know, again, see, it's the same questions asking before, but in a different way. But I think what organizations don't do is put enough time and training into managers to be better managers. End of. Yeah. If they're better managers, then they'll be able to support the experience of that individual. And the thing about it is they're not trained. Managers are usually just get promoted. They're not really trained into how to be managers. They're excellent in their technical skills, but not necessarily the people piece. And I think when you're dealing with a group like neurodiverse individuals, where there can be other different challenges sharp than the normal ones that they've experienced, that's when they kind of try to put us in the same bracket and try and do the same fixes, and it doesn't work. And it's about understanding from their community what isn't working and trying to figure out how they can do it, and be ready to pivot from the typical training programs and things they roll out and look at different opportunities. And there's loads of ways that large organizations could do that. A lot of it involves listening. And reverse, one of my organization did before I left was diverse reverse mentoring, where someone junior who was from a different intersectionality actually mentored someone senior. And that was amazing in our organization.
I've seen some organizations
Yeah.
do that, and it's really good. It does actually change the way you look at how you interact with someone from a different pay grade or pay scale. I really do like that.
Or different area.
Or different area, yeah.
Yeah, and that I had the opportunity in one of my sessions to talk about neurodiversity very, very much in my early stages. And that then propelled her to make sure she brought that conversation up from her senior level, because she was like, oh, I didn't realize that was a word. I just knew they had individuals that had ADHD and dyslexic. I didn't realize there was a community. And then from that, she then decided that on her own independently to raise and ask questions with her peers. So it works in two ways for me and the community, because not only was the message getting out there, but also she was then able to look at how she was working, how she was supporting her team, and then take that into consideration. But it's slow.
What do you think are the misconceptions that people have about people that are neurodiverse that you've come across? That you just people make these assumptions. I've got a few, but
There's quite a few. They're not great leaders. They can't finish tasks. They're not very good at progressing things. They're kind of in their own little world. They can't be trained and developed, even though, surprisingly, a lot of neurodiverse people end up going into higher education because they're just this works well for me, and I don't want to go into that working world where everything is crazy and doesn't make any sense. So you find that you get neurodiverse individuals who are serial educators. Mm-hmm. They'll do every course on the earth just to kind of stay in that realm. They're not empathetic. They can't socialize. It can there's such an array of different responses that people have or assumptions. The one I really don't like is the leadership one. Yeah. I really don't like them, saying, that neurodiverse individuals can't lead and can't do those kind of senior roles, because I will challenge that all day, every day, because I think we have so much great natural traits, and that's across the spectrum of neurodiverse individuals who can provide such great leadership and inspire teams.
I've met a lot of great neurodiverse leads, so I'm not sure where people have got the idea that neurodiverse people cannot lead, because there's quite a few out there, and they're so empathetic, they pay so much close attention to detail. They look at how the work dynamics are, and they're deep thinkers, and I find people don't tend to see that because they make the assumption they can't. Maybe the leadership looks different. Leadership looks different for different people, I guess. But we need to trash those ideas out.
Yeah. I think like you said, it's a traditional leadership versus, a neurodiverse leader will look at different ways, go and look at their team and look at different ways of implementing something, where if someone's used to being led or seeing another leader who's leading in a very traditional way that we're used to, that's when you say, well, that's not going to work. They don't look at the outcome and the output. And I think it's the output, right? It's not necessarily the way we're always doing things. We can do things differently and have a good or even better output.
I wanted to touch on people that are neurodiverse and looking to advance themselves in their careers. How would you advise someone who's neurodiverse to advance in their career? So, for example, they might be working, I'm just picking something randomly, there's no bias in this, but I'm a junior software developer. I want to become a senior developer. How can I progress? What do I do? Well, I have a neurodiverse condition. I don't know what to tell someone about it. What advice would you give that to someone who wants to sort of advance in their career?
That could be quite, I understand, could be quite tricky if someone's been in that situation and very delusioned, thinking that if I fix all my problems, then I'll just automatically shine and then my career will go up. Or even not even thinking about career progression at all. I think the most important thing is, if you're thinking about disclosing, before we go into any of the detail, if you're thinking about disclosing whether you're neurodiverse or not, think about what level of how comfortable you are with disclosing and to what level. We know that you don't have to disclose that you're neurodiverse, and you can disclose in regards to specific challenges that you're having. I think one of the things, and I can only go from my lived experience, that really propelled my career was wasn't necessarily disclosing that I had dyslexia. I think even the lady that helped me didn't really know I had dyslexia at the time when she helped me, but it was disclosing some of the challenges I had, and working with a mentor was really, really useful because I was able to see where I could be. And even though I moved into a different field, I was still able to see that I could go into that. And we spent a lot of time looking at strengths and being really strength focused and not so much looking at the challenges, which neurodiverse individuals who I coach as clients generally focus on. 90% of them, it's all about the challenges and it's not about the strengths. And I know it's hard to see strengths, and that's why I think it's good to have a support to help you identify those strengths and actually name them and own them, so that when you have opportunities, you can have you know where your strengths lie, and you can say whether that's a project for you or isn't. The second piece that is, if you're in a corporate environment specifically as well, usually have set up is, I always ask people, when you see those senior leaders and CEOs, how do you think they get there? They have a team. Like, they're never on their own. It's never like just one person on their own, like I'm CEO. They have a team. So you need to get your team together. So I had people that were in the role that I wanted to be, supporting me, giving me feedback, giving me advice about initiatives that I should get involved in. Maybe it's a little side project that software developers can get involved with. And also getting feedback constantly, not just feedback about how I can improve, but feedback on what I've done well, so I can pocket that. So when I end up going to discussion with manager about promotion, I have an example in my back pocket to produce. Having a sponsor, and I'm looking because we both know, Sarah, having a sponsor is a massive thing. However, I would say, just because you don't think you have a sponsor, if you are visible, and I know a lot of neurodiverse individuals are not visible or do not like to be visible in the workplace, and that's something that, unfortunately, in the way that especially corporate was set up, you need to be visible. But if you are, you'll be surprised that there are sponsors that lurk in the background. I had no idea I had a particular sponsor until I had a rant on a call about DE&I stuff, and then the person said, "Can I have a call with you?" Had a call with them, and I was like, they were like, and I was still in my fire, and I was like, "Oh, I've been at this grade for X amount of years, and I don't see progression, and blah, blah, blah. And I've been in this organisation 50, I know how, it goes." And then they were like, "Oh, I know about you. And I've been watching you." And I really, really, I loved it, great. But a part of me was like, could you not have told me? And particularly for neurodiverse as well. I really, even if you gave me a side wink eye, I'm not going to notice. Yeah. We don't know the cues. Even, I don't know how you are, but even after my 20 years, there's still cues and
you
workplace stuff you don't know.
I feel like I feel like I'm getting to the point where I feel rejection sensitivity dysphoria. So I feel like everything I do is probably not quite good enough, or someone's over criticizing me. So I feel I have to work extra hard to try and make a point or prove a point, or and I'll overthink things to think that it's actually worse. And then when it comes, it's not even that bad.
No.
But
even if the person was to come and say, "I'm your mentor," unless you sit down and say, "Danielle, I'm your mentor, this is what we're going to do." I have no idea. So I think that's the thing is, if for those who are listening to this, who are sponsors and they're repping for someone and they could potentially be neurodiverse or have neurodiverse traits, let them know, because it's really difficult. But I think the hardest thing on all of this, and a lot of people say, great Danielle, you got your ideas, whatever. I think that the hardest part is actually the self-advocacy. Because again, if you don't have the confidence to go and be visible to some extent, and you can work with your peers and the mentor and stuff to understand what that looks like for you, because everybody's different. If you've got someone who's quite introverted, that can be really challenging, but there's other ways you can showcase your work and be seen. But if you can self-advocate for yourself, then that's probably the biggest hurdle. And that's probably the hardest one as someone who is an introverted, extrovert, neurodiverse individual. That was the hardest. I had to put on that kind of alter ego of there's Danielle, and then there's Danielle work. And I had to use Danielle work sometimes, and I was scared because then I would do all the analysing afterwards under Danielle, but I had to use that work Danielle because otherwise I would just, it's really difficult.
I wanted to ask you one question. Do you think it's safe today for neurodiverse people to disclose their condition? Do you think it's safe?
Oh,
and also think about the intersectionality that comes with that. Because for some people it's safe. For some
people it is safe. And for some people it's kind of, they don't even think about safe, they just do. For some neurodiverse individuals, they just do, and they're unapologetic. I think coming from a generation, when I was education, we were told specifically, because I found out in my final year, we were told specifically not to disclose. It was heavily advised when you go into your job not to disclose.
That's crazy.
And we're not talking that far. I'm not that old, guys. So if you're going from that generation where you were told not to disclose at work, in a workplace, it's really hard. There's a lot of trauma around, what that looks like, what you're telling me. Because there's certain things I can't hide. Like you say, I can't hide that I'm black. I can't hide that I'm a woman.
No.
So then having to disclose another difference seems like another thing that I have to say. That seems like another kind of like reason for others, another reason or justification for doing something differently. And I think that could be really, really challenging. I think like I always say, when you're talking about disclosure, it has to be the right level, it's comfortable. My manager at the time, this obviously is not accepted now, came around and said to me within 2 weeks, we think you're dyslexic. And I actually, in all respect at that time, was so overwhelmed with doing all these kind of quality reports that I just turned around and said yes, because it was just a relief for me to be able to have my manager know that I was. We now know that that is not the way to approach the situation. But for me at that time, it was like I then was creating a space where my manager and my supervisor at the time knew that I was dyslexic. Now, they didn't know what it meant. I didn't even know what it meant. And all different things that show up. But it was something that was kind of like the elephant in the room was kind of discussed. And then one of the next steps that I took proactively with my manager was to keep on writing, because I focused on my challenges. It was always about the writing reports and the time management. And we really focused on that heavily in terms of my development. Sometimes too much, to the point where I was like, this is coming up again as my development. It was on development last year. Like, can we have something new? There's loads of wonderful things I could do as well. But it was like, it got to a point when that's when I changed careers. But it was good to have that initially. But people can disclose, to what level they need to. I think it's something they need support to figure out what's right for them. But going back to your question, whether it's safe, I think it depends on the individual, what's showing up for them. If I was to go to an organisation now, I'm open about being neurodiverse, it's a bit late now, but if I was to go to an organisation and say, well, you can see I'm black and female, and I have a hidden disability that's physically impacts me physically, and I'm neurodiverse, it is a lot of boxes for organisations to think about considering, and that can be a challenge. But it's something that, for me, I've accepted and worked through, and I think it has to be an individual case.
I do know of people that are very high profile and they are neurodiverse, but they will never disclose it. And they've told me they're neurodiverse.
And that,
and
you know what? And that's why it goes back to, when I was talking about the leaders,
Yeah.
that they can't be leaders. And you said, oh, I know loads of people that are leaders and neurodiverse. I tell you right now, I know loads of leaders who are probably neurodiverse. I watch and I'm like, but they don't disclose it. Like, the reason why I actually, before the Neurodiverse Network was even created, I used to get involved in so many different other things, and safety was one of them, workplace safety in terms of like the desk space and stuff like that. And I was on a call, and I remember being in the call, and the gentleman came in, didn't say his name. This is before we had the wonderful names up there. It might have even been anonymous. I wasn't even looking. And said, thank you to a department that was doing with a workplace adjustment service, amazing, guys doing work there globally. And he jumped on the call and he was like, thank you so much for the support that you have in regards to my dyslexia. And I was like, wow. First of all, I was angry because I was like, well, my organisation knew I was dyslexic for the last 10 years and never told me anything about this. It was a new soft launch approach. So I was like, what does that mean? And why haven't I been the one in the box? Because again, they knew what I was doing. And then who is this dude? Like he was a senior, you could tell he was a senior leader in the organisation, but didn't want to disclose. And I was like, wow. So you can see that there is still that perception and stigma around it. Yeah.
It's still there. And I think there's a lot of work to kind of work on it, because people just have these assumptions and they still don't know the positives and the greatness that comes with being neurodiverse. Yes, we have shortcomings, but so do neurotypical people. But it's just how we have to come around it and manage it in a different way. It's not about intelligence level or the ability. It's just the way your brain is wired, and that's how I look at it, really.
And if you think about it for your leaders, you don't want them to be doing things the old way. You want them to come with new innovative ways of getting around problems. So you want someone to do that, and I think that's where we're classed really good as leaders.
I wanted to ask you something. We kind of discussed this before the podcast, and I wanted to ask you about how do you see the world of work in the next 10 years? And I kind of put my thoughts forward, and I kind of think we're going to have a form of portfolio career type of working. How do you think that would look like for neurodiverse people? Because I think it could be a good thing, but let me hear what you think on that.
We just talked about it before we came on, and I think I was talking about how I see people that, and some people might like the traditional 9 to 5. Let's be honest, it gives you financial stability. There's a lot of benefits you can have from that. I think nowadays, from a financial aspect, everybody's pushing multiple streams of income. So people are always looking for extra ways that they can make themselves financially secure, and I think that's going to impact the way we work. Also coming from an organisation that's global, my manager was based in Italy. Most of my peers in that team were based in Italy. I was the only one in the UK, so I think global working different times of the day, and working from home, working at remote places, like maybe satellite offices. I think that will change. But I think the way that people will be approaching work, particularly for neurodiverse individuals, I think it's kind of started. A lot of people that I know who've left a lot of corporate environments who are neurodiverse have either gone into business themselves, or they've gone on to places where they can do small projects, not even small projects, big projects, but a diversity of projects. Because I think with us generally as a spectrum, we like diversity, we like change, we like difference. And so if we're putting something for the whole 10 years, even my career, I think I'm probably the last of the dragons, I would say, the last ones in the graveyard that are going to have a career. You're going to be 20 years in a role. I think people are going to move to different organizations. People are going to do different types of jobs in different sectors. And unfortunately, where we are now, we're in a very transition stage in terms of, from a generational perspective, where we're not quite there yet. The people are ready to shift, but the organizations are still looking at, have you been here for 5 years? Have you been in that role? How can you just come from that space into my space? Like, they're still looking at that. We're neurodiverse individuals, we're ready to pivot. We're like, I was working in cybersecurity, now I'm going to go and be an artist, then I'm going to go and work as a geneticist. I want to try it all. We're there, and unfortunately the society that we're living in isn't quite there yet. But when I look at the young people who I love so much, especially the neurodiverse, and I'm not talking about the children, I'm talking about, the 20 plus
Gen
who
Zers.
oh my God, they inspire me anyway, because they sometimes are a bit more unapologetic. We talk about safety, they're kind of ready to aggravate the scene, and especially the neurodiverse individuals, they're ready to say, you know what, I want to have this. I want to be able to work in this environment. And this is how you get the best out of me as an employee on a project, or as an employee, or as a freelance, or whatever. And I just love the way they're kind of trying to do it. And I think the way they're trying to do it, even the ones that aren't neurodiverse, is a natural way that neurodiverse will be able to bring their best selves to the workforce. Because I think we need to have diversity. The reason why I was in microbiology for so long was I had loads of multiple different projects. If I didn't, I would get bored. I think that's why I stayed.
I
So,
think sometimes when I look at the world of work, you can't get everything from one employer.
no.
That's what I think it is, and this is why I kind of had this brief discussion with you. What I believe will happen is that you'll get certain good things from certain employers and from certain avenues of work you might do. So, for example, if I was a freelancer, I'm going back to software development, even though I'm not a software developer, but let's say you were a software developer, you might work for a big corp as a software developer, but you might have your own little freelance, projects that you're working on to help small to medium-sized businesses, and you get a buzz from that because you're helping a small business grow, but you get the same, I guess, security from working from someone that is a lot larger, and you have that stability, and you might get all the perks that come with that big corporate. That could be, the pension plan, the 401k, shares in the company, whatever the company's offering. So you can't, I feel like the reason why I believe world of work will change is because not one organization can give you everything. No. And so the way a lot of people are working now, and I feel that will be the movement, is that, okay, I can get a little bit from this employer, I can get a little bit from my freelance job, and I can get a little bit from this. And I know that I can manage my day accordingly and have variety in what I'm doing. And I think that's what is happening. And this is where the idea of portfolio career comes from, where you have a career where you might do a bit of a 9 to 5. And it may vary from person to person. You might do a 9 to 5 for 6 months and say, drop that, I don't want to do it, I want to work for myself now, and do that for another 6 months. Or I want to be a contractor and do that. And you get a little bit from everything. Whereas obviously traditionally it was people either do their 9 to 5s, or you would be that CEO that managed a big company, or you had your own little small business, or whatever the case may be. So I feel that's how the world of work is. For some people it already is like that, but I feel more people will do that because you can't get everything from one employer. And I remember working for an organization where there were bits of the company I liked, but then when I got a new manager, I couldn't stand that manager. That manager got on my nerves. Whereas the previous manager was really cool, and I liked that person. So I feel like no organization can give you everything you need, and I think that's why people will move to that, because you can't get everything from one employer. It's just not possible.
And I want to add to that. Organizations need to stop trying to provide everything for everybody, because it's not possible. No. They need to get that out of their head. They're trying to provide everything. They need to be really authentic with what is their ethos, what they're trying to provide, what culture are they trying to provide, and stick to that and do that well, instead of trying to get all these benefits. Number 2 was, as a coach, that's what I do. So I have my business, I do my associate coaching role, and I have different faculties of my business as well. So I have diversity. And that is great. But one thing I would be very mindful about in the ways of working and going back to the neurodiverse community is making sure you really prioritize your well-being. Because doing a full-time job, as someone I know who did it, and then doing something on the side, it does take a lot of energy. And for us, energy is king, because it's not just the mental fatigue and stuff that shows up for us, and the overanalyzing, the procrastination, even the hyperfocus, all of that can really drain us, even if we're overly excited and energized for it. So there has to be a balance. And I think I would love to be able to have, in my utopia, would be exactly what you said, a portfolio career where people aren't just managing their jobs and their projects, but their time. And managing that. And so if someone wants to work 2 o'clock in the morning to 5 o'clock in the morning, they can do that if that works for them. And I think, that would be an amazing place for people to do, where we're innovating, we're collaborating, we're creating, but just all in different time zones, doing all different things, and the best for us individually.
We have to wrap up, but I just wanted to ask, is there any advice or encouragement you would like to share with the audience members about how they can manage in neurodiverse conditions? And also, how do we find you, Danielle, and how can we watch your amazing TED Talk as well?
So you can find me on places like LinkedIn, Danielle Kajian-Mikowski. You can come to my Instagram, where I have more of the fun time, Thinking Like Coach, and in there's my link tree with all the links to my TEDx talk, and get in contact with me. And I suppose the one advice I can give to neurodiverse individuals is take some time out, because one thing I love about coaching is the holding space. And some clients just say, we haven't really come for strategy, but you've just held space. But you can hold space for yourself. So just make some time to reflect on, okay, what are really challenging me? what are things I really like about myself, what things I enjoy and what things I don't enjoy. I have a free mini energy kit as well if you want some support to understand those questions. And then, look at situations where you've done that. And then that helps you as a basis to be able to know, okay, these are the things that shown up for me. I then might need support to help me with my next step, whether that's coaching and mentoring. I might need to talk to my peers. There's a lovely community here that you can talk to other neurodiverse individuals, find out what they did, get support so you're not alone. And there's a lovely neurodiverse community that we've got connections to as well if we're not the right fit, because everybody needs someone different.
Of course.
And it's all about finding what is right for you. And I think that then builds up the confidence. And then if we're talking about the workplace, just to round it up, that will give you the self-advocacy in the workplace.
Thank you so much, Danielle, for coming on Divine Enigma. You've been such a gem, and everything you have said, I've learned so much from it, and I'm sure the audience members will do. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. You're lovely.
Thank you. Oh, that was good.
That was good.
There was so much gems, man.
That was there.
See.
No, it was good. It was
really
good. It was good. I was trying to add something because I did a talk yesterday.
Yeah.
And I was trying to add something different to this so people can get a different added value.
Yeah.
I like to make it sporadic. And I was like, oh, when you came with that World of Work one, I was like, wow. We had, I don't think, enough time to talk about that one. Wow. But yeah.
No, I did
and,
think-
and it's good because,
Yeah.
again, the good point is that we're both project managers.
Mm-hmm.
So we're having different insights from a project manager perspective. I think people would really, really appreciate.
Yeah.
There's not much. And I know that you've done a lot about stakeholder I saw your thing about stakeholder management recently.
Oh.
Yeah.
I always think no one cares and they're watching.
No, but you know
people-
what? I want to contact. I did say this initially when I started, and then you know what you're like when you've got. I mean, I'm not, like I said, I'm not diagnosed ADHD, but boy, do I have traits. When you sit there thinking, I want to do this, and one of the things, because I did PMP,
Yeah.
and one of the things I was like, PMI need to be neurodiverse, and some people kind of jumped on it, not us. Obviously, intersectionality bits. And I was like, they need to be on it because that's an area that is my community that I did, like even like microbiology, that's my community that work there, and they need to be shouting about it. And especially project management, it's so massive in different sectors.
It is.
And it's so traditional. I mean, even the agile way of working is still so traditional. And it's like, that doesn't work for my brain. I'm sorry.
You try to put agile methodologies, but I just tend to find that I mix everything up.
I mix
But,
it up, but
yeah.
then the funny thing about the agile terminologies is that when I look at it, I'm like, I mean, if we were going to write a process, that would probably be the way that we work, because it's about, let's do it, let's try it. Does it work? Let's try.
Yeah.
And that's how we work.
That's
That's how a neurodiverse individual works. I think that they made some extra complications with Scrum Master and all these technical words. And I was talking to a friend about it, and she was like, she's lucky in her company, she works for Jazz, and they allowed her to really implement agile, and they love it. And she's able to, she goes, I get rid of all the fussy words and we just keep it simple. They don't even know they're doing agile. She's like, yeah, we're doing this, this and this. And then afterwards she's like, oh yeah. I was like, what's this agile thing? Oh yeah, what we've been doing. And just keeping it really simple. And I think for neurodiverse project managers, I think that'd be really important. But there's a lot of people, a hell of a lot. I think I get so many questions on LinkedIn about, can you have a call with you about project management? And I'm just like, like, can you give me advice about being neurodiverse and project management? Or I'm neurodiverse, I want to go into project management. And I'm like, do you really? Are you sure? I think in the essence, it's one of those roles we'd be brilliant at, but just not in the way that we set up in most organisations.
I feel they use a lot of complex language, and I have to sit down and process the language for myself to then get over the hurdle of managing the project.
And that's before you even know what the process.
Yeah.
That's just the language,
It's the
before you even know the
language,
process is.
So I do that, and I ruminate, and I'm like, okay, right. Okay, this is how you do it. And then I think people like the way I project manage because I just break things down. I make it very, very simple. What other project managers, you go into them, you're like, you come out and they're like, I don't understand. They're always coming back to me. Sarah, could you explain that to me? So if you can explain that to me, I'm like, okay, I'll break it down for you and make it as clear as day so you understand what's going on.
And that's where I think the benefits come. Sorry,
Yeah.
we digress.
Yeah.
But I think that's where the benefits come as we could do another one.
Yeah.
Being universe and project
Yeah.
management. That's a whole game. How did it go?
Yeah, it's going good. Your memory card.
Yeah, I do. Let me go and bring it over.
Could I tell? I did hit this by accident once. I was like, oh,
That's fine.
But I get scared when I touch these things because I just know that they are very expensive. I have a Rhodes mic thing and I know the price of that one, so I'm looking around and I'm like, ooh.
Rode mics are not cheap at all.
No.
So
But I
did
got-
it go what? Did it go well?
The podcast recorded?
Yeah.
Of course it went well.
Oh, okay.
Good.
Yeah. I'll let you know when I've edited it and stuff.
Yeah,
It takes
yeah,
a
yeah,
while,
yeah.
but-
No, that's fine. I know that it usually takes a while and time and everything. So do you still work as a project manager? Oh my gosh. You're not worthy. Sorry. I had to go. I was like, even for my sanity, I think I went because of other things as well as and I had the opportunity, obviously the business making that was able to make some money. I was able to leave, but oh my god, project management world is just
It's a mad world, and it's frustrating when people don't do what they need to do, but you roll the punches, you just get with it. It's hard. It's not easy.
no, it's not easy.
It's not easy, but it's helped me. I look at everything that I've done in my life, and it's helped me be better at certain things that I wouldn't have been good at if I didn't go through those things.
Go for the challenges.
Yeah,
yeah.
those
See, that's another good podcast there.
yeah.
You could talk about that because it's talking about the challenges you went to and how they helped you.
Yeah, they've helped me.
Become where you are
It's
now.
formed me as a person. But at the time when you're going through it, you feel like you're going through hell.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm glad I'm in project management, but I used to think that you can just do one career and that was it. But I feel like I can probably do other things through my project management experience. So I don't know. I might change career again. I don't know.
That's what I said.
Yeah.
That is a really dangerous thing to say when you're in pharma, because they literally are like, you're a farmer for life. So I remember when I gave my notice and they're like, so what farm did you go into? I'm not. What do you mean? What do you mean not going to another farmer? What do you mean you're moving out of STEM? What do you mean? They were completely, they did not understand, they did not get it at all. They kind of grazed over this, oh, she's coaching, whatever, fluffiness. And they did not understand that even in project management, in pharma, you don't even move. I said to them, I got to that point where I was like, I like project management. I could do some engineering, I could do some construction, I could do IT. As long as I have the knowledge, I think I could do this anywhere. And it wasn't the project management itself that I really hated. Yes, it's technical and they put a lot of red tape, but it was actually, I could do this in any other sector and enjoy it equally. And some people in pharma, they're like hardcore. Pharma to the end. It's all about the patient, pharma to end. And I'm like, is it though? Are we really doing that? And so you have to just, for me, it was like, I didn't really necessarily leave project management. I left pharma.
You left pharmacy.
Pharmaceuticals.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
When
left
you're
big
saying
pharma.
I'm thinking pharma as in a farmer, but no, you're saying
Sorry.
but
Pharmaceuticals.
But you're saying pharmaceuticals.
Yeah.
Because I was like,
A
you
big-
didn't do. I looked at you up. I was like, no, you didn't do pharma. You did pharmaceuticals. Okay,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
big pharmaceuticals. The big.
So
boys.
GlaxoSmithKline.
Yeah, just call it GSK. I'm glad when they changed. Glad when they changed it to GSK because I was like dyslexic. I was like, so do I write Klein as in the German way, or do I write Klein as in the other way? I spelled it wrong so many times. And I was like, when I put GSK, I was like, okay, that makes sense. GSK is
and then
easy.
His other ones, Johnson and Johnson,
AstraZeneca, Pfizer,
Pfizer,
Roche.
Yeah.
They're the ones that are known for the COVID.
Yeah.
Vaccines. Yeah. And weirdly enough, I moved into vaccines in the middle of pandemic.
Oh gosh.
That was project managing vaccines in the middle of pandemic. I don't know why. I was like, we're in the middle of pandemic, then I was going to apply for the job that's to do with vaccine PM. Okay. It was great. I loved it.
That would have been busy.
I was not on any COVID vaccine projects, thank God.
Oh, okay.
No, I didn't want to go on that.
That would have been really busy.
But I was in, but it was busy on all the other projects because they were like, okay, so I know this isn't like a pandemic need, but we want you to do the same timelines as COVID. We're like, but the government's not going to let us go that quick. So it was all the expectations were not very realistic. And it just added a lot of stress to the team and to a lot of the project managers, including myself. So a lot of us were like, which is why I say I could project manage in any other sector. But I think I've left pharma. I don't think I'd go back to pharma. I'd go into project management again, but not in this way.
Into pharmaceuticals.
Yeah, never go back into pharmaceuticals in that capacity. No. A lot of people have said to me, "You might have to if you get another job because that's your experience." I will find a way. Find a way to construction, engineering. I'll find a way. IT. I'll find a way. It's yeah, especially now, COVID.